Everyone, welcome back to No Cap Space. Tyler and Andrew here today. Folks, we got some breaking news in the WNBA. Satu Sabally, we had already kind of expected it. We had already kind of expected it, but is now official via the unrivaled media availability, which I have a quick comment on before we really dive into this. But from Miles Elrich on Twitter, one of the Liberty beat writers and good friend. I'm working with the Wings organization to find a home for me, my next home for me, because I've already played my last game in Dallas. First off, we're going to get into what's next, what this means, what teams, but can we just shout out the fact that Unrivaled is changing offseason discourse by giving us this level of availability to these players. We just heard Courtney Vandersloot is going to be testing free agency. Now we get this from Satu. Like, this being a year-round sport where we have this availability has completely changed the landscape of WNBA offseason discourse. And we get stuff like this, which we have just lacked, frankly, over the years when it comes to having the insight of what is actually going on in the WNBA over the offseason. And now we're getting stuff like this, and it's because of Unrivaled existing and having these availabilities. So shout out to Unrivaled for that. But Andrew, again, I don't think this is a incredibly shocking thing, but it's just now official. Immediate thoughts on the fact that we now know that she has played her last game in Dallas.
Yeah, well, first, it's a great point you make on Unrivaled. I actually had not considered it until you said it. But when you think about the infrastructure of women's basketball media, so much of us are doing this as like second jobs, as hobbies, as passions, as freelancers. And there is not a lot of full-time reporters that are out there that have the time and resources to spend being able to go get players in the offseason. Not to mention, and no shade to teams or players or their agents, they're not super available in the offseason too. It is very rare that you have the opportunity to get them. So having this creates an environment where you have to dispatch media people, you have to pay freelancers, you have to have them cover these things. And within these availabilities, this is the type of stuff we get. So it's a great point. And you're right. I think what it allows, just from like a media health of the league and improving the discourse and improving the quality of reporting on the league, is it forces outlets to have people here full year round. And eventually, if Unrivaled evolves, if it changes, if the dates change, whatever, the infrastructure is now there. So the infrastructure through this league is building. And I think that's a really cool way of framing that piece. We knew this was going to happen with Satu Sabally. It was a really slim chance that she was going to go willingly back to the Dallas Wings. I think it's noteworthy that she said last game, because it doesn't even open the door for if there's a good enough offer for max 1-year contract. I know that's kind of something that we had talked about in regards to a potential Paige Bueckers pick, right? With this discourse about like, will Paige hold out, which I think is kind of a wild piece of discourse, but it's plausible, not probable, but plausible. And to me, what this says is that Dallas is going to have to hardball this. Like, they're going to have to core Satu Sabally now. Like, this isn't, and they were probably going to do that anyway, but this isn't a situation where the door was even open for leverage. You know, and now, to be honest, it undercuts your leverage in a Paige Bueckers conspiracy theory, because the argument against so much of Paige and her team making that decision to say we're not going to go to Dallas was being like, well, hold on. What if they get Satu to stay and sign a 1-year max and advocate, hey, stick it out for a year. We're getting Paige. Paige comes and you make this argument of like, let's build this out and see where it goes. You don't have that now, based on this. And so for me, I think beyond the cap implications, beyond the team and the league implications, I think to me, this is an indictment of the Dallas organization. And it's a perception that Chris Koklanis, the head coach, that Kurt Miller, the GM, and now, Greg Bibb, the president, they have to fix this fast. Like, very fast. You have to fix this immediately, because what this tells me, this is the post or pre-Angel Reese Camila Cardoso Chicago Sky problem, where there is clearly a book out on you, and there aren't 30 teams in this league where you can luck into some people here and there or build out through the draft here and there. There's currently 12 teams, soon to be 13, soon to be 14, soon to be more. But as of right now, there's limited options. And if people only have limited options and you are one of those teams that they don't want to go to, everyone in the league knows what the perception of you is.
Yeah.
So to me, this tells me that there is a clear perception problem in Dallas. And they got to fix that this offseason, and maybe whether that means overpaying somebody a tier below Sabally in free agency, whether this means coring her and agreeing to a trade that is a favorable organization to her, but that still nets you some players to stay competitive. And your sales pitch to Paige Bueckers has to be substantial, or honestly, this is going to heat up that talk. And I will be honest, having been in media for as long as I have, those things are not an individual creation. Somebody is saying something about that. Whether that's coming from the UConn organization side, whether that's coming from Paige's team, whether that's coming from Paige herself, whether that's scuttlebutt within other GMs, there's a seed that was planted that gets that story into the next and written by Howard Magdal. And Howard is as plugged in as anybody in our industry when it comes to connected with longtime people in the W.
Yeah.
So does this change the draft perspective here? We talked about Olivia Miles, but does this mean that you look at a Dominique Malonga? Does
that's
what
what I was?
That you look at a Kiki
You're also losing
fan?
Natasha Howard as well.
Correct.
So that forward position is, I mean, obviously depending on the return, but wide open right now.
Yeah. Does that mean Kiki Iriafen now all of a sudden becomes a significantly more enticing prospect at that number one spot, and you can say what you want about what her effectiveness has been game to game and her shooting percentages, being a little down year over year. But we watched her against Maryland on Wednesday night, 21-7. Her averages are 18-9 on 51% shooting. And that's coming in an offense that, to be honest, is a little,
it's not doing her any favors by any means.
It's a little choose your own adventure right now, So I think this becomes a lot more muddy at this number one spot, because now we're talking about a team with substantial needs and an all WNBA level guard already. So do you decide that Tash Howard already is I'm fucking out of here. She's I'm already gone. So you've already lost one max player forward, even though I don't think you would have wanted her long term. Anyway. She's on the other side of her career, and even when she played with the Liberty with Sabrina, I was like, I hate this fit with so many people on this team. But that's now a 4-5 swing that's gone. Stephanie Suarez is gone. They waived her. Now you have your 3-4 wing that's gone. So who else is there? And you need a good big to win in this league. We saw it this year. You need two good bigs to win in this league now.
Yeah.
So I think the draft just became very interesting because at least for a period, I thought there was some degree of holding out hope. Don't believe it until the pen is on the paper. If she says I've played my last, that doesn't leave any room open to maybe we negotiate, maybe we see, maybe there's a leverage point. No, she's gone.
It's wraps.
Yeah, it's wraps. And so a lot I think just changed here because now we know, and we are 2 days away from coring. We're 2 days away from that first phase of free agency opening, and so we might not have found this out until the 20th after the coring happened, that she is gone to be gone. But now if she's out in the public saying she's gone to be gone, that changes even the coring process now because you can't core and keep a disgruntled player. I think framing her as disgruntled is wrong. Let me catch myself there. A player that seems to be under the belief that she is not wanting to play there anymore. That's how I would have put that.
Yeah, I mean, this obviously, to your point, I think there's now, I mean, again, this was always assumed, and we expected to be here, but again, I like your point about when we're finding this out because I am intrigued to know if that changes the some of the actions that we see here now across the rest of free agency and how that has the potential to change things now. But let's talk about some of the potential landing spots. Look, man, I've been pushing it for months. I know Shawnee's been there.
Yeah.
The Indiana Fever. The SATOU fit in Indiana could not be better. Again, I've spoken about this, but the quote about Caitlin Clark after Indiana played in Dallas, like, it was just one of the most openly appreciative, maybe it might be the word, of like and maybe acknowledgement of like what was actively happening in the moment. And in a way, it was like, I wish there was more Dallas fans here. Like, so it was like kind of funny in that way. But like, again, like it makes sense to me. I feel like she is the perfect to help space the floor, to run the floor. Aaliyah is a lockdown paint defender in that way to really help with SATOU's defense in that sense. I don't feel like SATOU is a bad defender by any means, but certainly not an all WNBA defensive team defender. And so I love that fit when it comes to trading, and because that is what this is going to come down to. If you're potentially a little bit unfamiliar with the core process, this is going to be a sign and trade. And SATOU is going to have, it's essentially a no trade clause, which doesn't really have there's no trade clauses in the W. But essentially what this kind of becomes is a no trade clause where SATOU is now going to have a whole lot of say in where she ends up, because she's a free agent. She signs a contract. And with that, this limits the teams that Dallas can even try and force a haul out of. So I truly don't know. And I think we won't really know, frankly, until we see what deal is made, how much leverage, if any at all, Dallas truly has in this situation, because they might just get stuck trying to get whatever they can, as opposed to truly getting a haul in this. And that's where Indiana, to me, is interesting. Obviously, they have the number 8 pick in this draft to potentially deal out to Dallas. Kelsey Mitchell is the kind of question mark surrounding Indiana right now, in the sense of, does she want to stay? Are we going to learn more about that in the coming days? Is she going to get cored? What does that look like in this scenario? So Indiana, I don't know if they have the most enticing deal, but from a fit perspective, to me, and I've been saying it for months, Indiana, SATOU, Caitlin, Aaliyah, I'm all in on what that is, and potentially maybe receiving a Nalissa Smith back in the deal, just even as a placeholder for that 4 position for a year or two, is a potential thing if they do go guard in the draft. Again, I assume that they're dealing that first round pick as well, so they would presumably get another pick in the first round to potentially go draft a 4 there. But again, Indiana is the team for me. But I think the sleeper team here, I don't even know if they're considered a sleeper team, frankly, is New York. The defending champions. Obviously, SATOU's sister Niara plays there. I feel like has truly established herself in New York. New York has the number 7 pick in this draft. Decent depth pieces as well to try and deal out. And it'd be interesting in seeing what that potentially looks like, and if New York would be interested in adding SATOU to obviously a championship level core. I mean, SATOU is certainly a championship caliber player just from a talent perspective individually, but what does that fit look like when you already have a Jonquel, when you already have a Stewie? I don't know. So I'm in, those are the 2 teams that immediately jump out to me as potential landing spots for SATOU in this. Is there any other teams that are sticking out to you, or any comments on those 2? Yeah, let's talk.
Okay, so coring to me, I think, is inevitable here.
For sure.
Because
Agreed.
I think this would be malpractice to let her walk for nothing.
Agreed.
And if you core her, you're at least getting something. It's not going to be what you want, but at least you get something with this.
For sure. 100%.
So there's a couple different things. I agree that I think New York is a likely destination to link up with her old college teammate in Sabrina Ionescu, her sister Niara Sabally. Important to note, Courtney Vandersloot is technically coming off the books this year. It's $191,000, close to a max contract in this league. Sloot's older. She actually had a quote recently, I'm going to test the market and see what's good for my family and I. That kind of tells me, also when it's like my family and I know
you're probably
money,
out.
but like $191,000 and you're on the back end of your career from an endorsement perspective, it's not going as far in New York as people think it does. So I do think that maybe we could see a scenario where Sloot they let her walk, and that opens up substantial cap space for her. And I think so New York, obviously a front runner. Indiana, also a front runner. You know they're going to go hard for her because that is basically the position of need that Indiana has to be able to become a contender.
Yep.
The two under the radar teams that I'm looking at here, first of all, the Golden State Valkyries. I think you can throw a couple of those rotational pieces in pick number 5 into a package. It's not what Dallas would want in terms of star power, but if you are committed fully to a rebuild, and this is the tricky thing, right? Because you've got Enrique on a max deal for a while. So, and I don't know how many people are taking that deal. It's not a John Wall level constraint, but I don't know how movable that contract is. However, Enrique and picks 1 and 5 in a very deep draft, that opens up some flexibility because what it means to me is maybe you don't need to take Paige at 1 if you have 1 and 5, because the guards are so deep that maybe you prioritize a Kiki Iriafen or a Dominique Malonga at 1 to alleviate the loss in the front court from Satu and Tash Howard, who's already said she's not coming back. They're getting that max deal off the books. And now you're in a place where you make that pick at 1, and then there's a bunch of different guard options that can still exist at 5. You know, that guard big board is big. Paige Bueckers obviously will go early. Olivia Miles obviously going to go early, but behind her, you've got Sonia Citron. You've got AZ Fudd. You've got Cheyenne Sellers or to Georgia Amore, right? You've got other bigs. You've got an Anissa Morrow, for instance.
Do you think that they would have to skip over Paige at 1 to get? Because here's my thinking, right? In my head,
I don't think you have to skip over her.
Yeah.
And maybe to your point, maybe you're right. Maybe it's the flip.
I think the flip would be more likely where you get. Where I feel like if you go to 5, let's say you pick Paige 1. Presumably, it's certainly feeling like Olivia Miles at 2 to LA, and if not, then it's going to be either it'll be more likely one of the bigs, right? One between
you're right. Maybe Iriafen and Malonga.
I think you're getting either one of Kiki or Dominique Malonga at 5 because Chicago's not taking big. Washington, I feel like will probably go best player available.
They'll BPA. But they have a lot of bigs, so they'll probably
exactly. So that's like if I was to guess, I could see Sonia potentially going there. I can see Sonia going at 3 to Washington or to Chicago, excuse me, depending on where Olivia Miles goes. I think you could go Paige at 1 and still comfortably you're ending up with Kiki or Dominique Malonga at 5, and you're going.
I think you're right. Forget what I said. I know we can't. I know we don't do cuts for the authenticity's sake, but I think you're right. Forget what I said. Paige at 1 and one of the 2 at 5.
Like if you're going home very, very happy if that's what you're ending up with.
And I think, I guess, to adjust this argument on the fly and kind of build the plane in the sky here a little bit, if you take Paige at 1, now you have that backcourt and a WNBA all-star level rookie to pair with one of those 2 bigs in the front. And Awak Kuyer's actually been pretty good over in Europe. She didn't play stateside this year because of the international restrictions. She's a good over in Europe. So maybe you get her over here. And now you have, I think you, because you've got Tierra McCowan operating in that center spot, I think the likelier situation is maybe it's Kiki Iriafen or maybe Anissa Morrow because they can kind of play that 3-4. I think Kiki projects more of a 3-4 in the W as opposed to the 4-5 that she kind of is now in college, just from the size and the length perspective. I think she's increased her range a little bit. That athleticism, I think, can work more on the wing and the W than in the front court where it's traditionally been at the college level. Anissa Morrow, I think, is a bona fide wing in the W.
100%.
I still have a couple of questions about like how it operates at the next level, but I did read recently her wingspan is similar to Nafisa Collier's, and that changed my opinion a little bit from a perspective of where that can work at the next level, because if you have that length, it is entirely possible to be that successful at the wing at the next level. So yeah, forget what I said. You are totally right. If Golden State is the option, Paige at 1, big at 5, and that can allow you to restock the cupboard, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
have two good players in a core, and kind of be a little LA Sparksy with, you know, like Rakia Brink and De'Erica Hamby, except it's a bit of a different look. And I think Paige has a higher immediate ceiling than a Rakia or a Cam Brink did right out of college. So Golden State is an interesting dark horse piece that I would look for. If you're looking to compete now, and try and augment Paige or augment with a big, would a 1-for-1 with Vegas be the worst thing in the world with Kelsey Plum?
I don't know how redundant that feels with RDK, but like from a just a star to star one-off, I don't think you're getting a better deal out of that in terms of just pure star power that way.
I think the Aces will call on that. I don't think Dallas would say yes, because like you said, I think the fit, I mean, that's two people on the perimeter being like, fuck you, I'm not passing.
But whole lot of skipping.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and there's, I mean, maybe you do that and, you know, do the Jewel Lloyd and tank for Lauren Betts, but I think the Aces will call about that because that's a major position of need for the Aces, and the Aces don't really have anyone coming off the books that can adequately fill what they have, and frankly, I don't think the Aces have a lot to trade.
No, they don't. Notably, they lost their first round pick as well this year.
Yeah, well, and frankly, you don't have a lot to trade in the aggregate either. Like you can't package Kia Stokes and Gustafson, right? Like that's not going to work. Dallas is going to hang up the phone immediately. I think as far as other teams, because I'm trying to look at what you can do as far as draft position goes. The Mystics have 4 and 6. And so maybe you could convince Washington to package 4-6 and like a Brittany Sykes, or like 4-6 and a wing player of theirs, to try and entice that to, you know, to try and make that work. Because right now it's Adkins, Sykes, Dolson, Samuelson, Austin that are currently within their cap. They have the space to open stuff. They have space. They don't have a lot of space. They have actually the least amount of open space going into free agency. And granted, this is all before coring occurs.
Right.
But I think that the 4 teams that are going to be in the race, the Aces, but they don't have a legitimate shot. I think the Valkyries have a really good shot if your intent is to go fully into the rebuild, and I guess like I'll call it an accelerated rebuild, because you have 2 pieces there in T-Mac and Enrique.
Yep.
You have the Fever. I don't know. Again, that feels more Aces coded to me, where it's like the Aces have and the Fever both, like they have the want, but do they have the assets that are enticing enough to the Wings to be interested in? And then I think New York are the front runners, because logically speaking here, you could also put Benai Jelani in a trade.
You could, and I think you also have obviously some of the European players that they've had, potentially some of the rights. Rebecca Gardner is also there as a potential, even as a potential replacement, to be more willing to let go of a different player.
Well, you could frankly, I think it would kill a lot of New York fans, but you could send off Fibic. They're the same.
You could, and I feel like you would likely have to in this scenario, frankly. I think a couple just other, not to dive in like heavy into them, but just another couple of interesting teams that I'm kind of sort of eyeing, but like not even I wouldn't even put them in that tier with those teams, frankly. But I think Phoenix is an interesting one, in the sense of we've seen Matt Ishbia being an owner that is willing to just go for it. They have the new facility. They have pairing her next to BG will certainly entice. They don't really have a 4 right now. Obviously we don't know exactly what's going on with DT. But this could potentially, I'm not gonna expect DT to take a pay cut, frankly.
No.
But in the sense of if you're trying to go in, if DT does come back and you try and go in for one last year, what does that look like? And this would be an interesting deal, and they have the facilities for it. Also, maybe Minnesota, potentially, just because they have just so many pieces depth-wise, that if Dallas is going full rebuild, obviously Minnesota has a high first-round pick, so not an incredibly enticing pick from there, from that perspective. But Minnesota has some interesting pieces already on the roster from a young player perspective that, depending on what these other deals look like, would be intriguing from that sense. And then obviously, I mean, like I guess you can't. And the other team, Atlanta, is just an eye emoji team, just from. Well, I'd be interested in knowing how comfortable they feel with their current roster right now as they enter into this brand new system with Smesko entering it. And if there are any players that are high names, I'm not going to say like you're trading Ryan Howard.
No. And that's kind of the thing from like a fit perspective is Ryan already feels like Satu in that way. Like they fill a similar role. Like I'm looking for teams that have that need.
Yeah.
The Lynx are an interesting one because you're right. Like there's an upgrade component there. Like she's a clear upgrade from an Alana Smith or a Bridget Carlton, even though they've been great. The cap math there, I think, is going to be would be the tricky part.
Agreed. Yeah.
Seattle, I don't really think you have much assets to give. I can't imagine what a Jewel Loiter-Rinke backcourt would.
That's what I'm saying. Because I feel like if you're going for Jewel, you would go for KP.
Yeah, like, exactly.
You know, so like it like
at a cheaper price and a even probably lesser ball dominance than Jewel is. There's open. I mean, I think they're gonna maybe. I mean, like a tinfoil hat would be like a NECA sign and trade, but like even then I feel like that
probably not.
That's like for like, and you're taking on basically the same player but older, so like that doesn't really feel like it makes sense. I think the sparks are pretty set because I think Hamby and Rakia kind of are Satu, like they kind of fill that like wingish position. The position of need would be the Sky, but I don't think they have the assets to trade for that. I don't think they're going to move out of 2 because you can't afford to give up one of the 2 best guards in this draft. You need a point guard, and it's Paige or Miles like at this point, and I don't think there's any point guard on the books right now unless they're going to do a move for Jewel, which I think would be batshit insane to do at this point. I don't think there's anybody that they probably prioritize in free agency that is a much better option than what the full-on rebuild would be with a young core of insert young point guard here, Camilla and Angel.
Because at 3, at worst, if you're going guard, you're getting Sonia.
Here's the thing to your point, like it's not a de facto no trade clause. I mean, how much is Kirk going to want to work with Satu and on this? I think that's a big question, right? Because like she can't exactly say no to anywhere they send her, is my understanding when you're cord. Like you know that better than I.
Yeah, I don't know honestly exactly how much it can be like a denied, like no, like just a complete no trade clause. But to my understanding, it's like Satu is going to have a major say, if not final say, in her final destination in that way. Like the way I'm picturing it, and this honestly could be not how it goes down at all. But I'm imagining Satu is giving 3 to 4 destinations, and it kind of goes from there.
Yeah, and it'll be a sign and trade. So
right.
So that's the other piece, and that's also important to consider for a team like the Liberty, right? Because if you take Sloot off the books and you grab one of these unrestricted free agents, you could reasonably, it stands to reason, you could sign and trade one of those unrestricted free agents. So if you think about it this way, right? NECA, for instance, is an unrestricted free agent that cannot be cored by Seattle. So logically, I'm not saying this will happen, but logically and within the rules of the league, the Liberty could sign NECA in free agency and then execute the sign and trade to send NECA to Dallas, and Satu goes to New York. That's not, again, it's not probable, but in terms of what is legitimately the rules allow you to do it in the league, that is a type of headcanon you can have where that type of thing can work. And here's one other component for you to think about here too. DeWanna Bonner is also
Mm.
a guard that cannot be cored. To me, DeWanna Bonner and Alyssa Thomas are a package deal.
Yep.
Alyssa Thomas is also a free agent max contract this year. However, she can be cored.
Yep.
Now, I don't foresee a situation in which Satu would ever agree on going to Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
Ever, 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 ever. However, organizationally, you could conceivably, if you are Dallas and you want to just straight up maximize the window now, you could execute a sign-in trade or offer a sign-in trade that takes Alyssa Thomas and Satu swapping and then sign DeWanna Bonner, and then your team all of a sudden becomes Arike, DB, AT, T-Mac. With the number one pick that you can afford to either sign Paige 2 and put Paige 1, Arike 2, DeWanna Bonner 3, AT 4, T-Mac 5, or you could flip that one pick for a treasure trove of assets or bench option players that can compete for a championship now to maximize Arike's window. So I think what does make this interesting for Dallas, they are not out of options. The leverage sits in Satu's court, but Dallas does have options here. And I think what I love about this happening and what I love about Satu doing here is it opens the dominoes. And now the possibilities of what can happen in free agency are endless in a 1-year format. Because again, like you said, the last time we talked about 3 hottest takes for free agency for Ball Up Top, all of the different permutations are going to be 1 year in length. So how you decide to do this is going to be really cool and really fascinating. And since she's not going there, there is a chance that not everybody stands cap. That we just roll and we just do this.
Yeah. I'm very, very excited. Actually, I do think it's interesting. I just saw this on the side real quick before we end. From Roberto Rodriguez, Jewel Lloyd chose not to address her future at all in when asked about it in the Unrivaled media availability. Didn't comment on the relationship on like with the front office of the Storm, how that's working out. Not too surprising, frankly, but it's just interesting seeing
player for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting in seeing now what these different strategies potentially look like, because again, the players have the platform now with Unrivaled, and seeing how, I mean, it's kind of just up in the air now, frankly, in what this might look like. And also, you can't tell me that there's no tampering going down in Unrivaled. So when it comes to players being on the same team or whatever, this is Team USA minicamp every year now, essentially, for these players to talk, to team up with one another in different ways and see if they potentially want to be teammates in the WNBA. And so if you don't think that Sabrina is on that Phantom basketball club team, hitting Satu with the elbow, being like, hey, I know you like New York. We saw you at the parade. You're crazy.
Yep.
So I mean, Unrivaled has completely changed the landscape. And we have, I mean, essentially, kind of alongside Jewel, our first dominoes of WNBA free agency as we await the opening of conversations when it comes to core players, when it comes to restricted players on Saturday. These dates are going to kind of just come quickly, I feel like, when in terms of when we find out these deals and everything. So, again, shout out to Unrivaled for bringing us the discourse that we don't always have in WNBA free agency. Obviously, the new eyes, I think, brings more reporting as well within all this. So it's all a very, very exciting time between college, WNBA free agency, and, of course, Unrivaled. And we got you covered for it all. So we had a little breaking news today. We couldn't let you miss out on it and get our thoughts off. And very, very exciting to see where Satu ends up, how the situation develops. And we'll have you covered all the way through with all of the commentary as the situation develops. And yeah, make sure you guys tap in tonight if you're watching this on the day it drops, because we do have a post-game show. LSU versus Tennessee is tonight. We will be live immediately at the buzzer of that game. And then on Sunday as well, South Carolina and Texas will have both boots on the ground there in person and also a post-game right after live as well. So make sure you're subscribed here, hit the bell so you are notified anytime we go live or have a surprise drop like this. And yeah, stay tapped in with No Cap Space. We'll see y'all next time.